So I have some career advice for young men that I hope can be useful and valuable for them. Okay, so stick with me here. But a bunch of thoughts in my head, have to get them out before they disappear. Okay. The other day I saw a video on YouTube of this guy, that younger guy, um, single guy, wanted to buy this house, fix it up, and rent it. Okay. So, and he wanted to do it without a realtor, right? So you don't have to worry about all the closing fees, all of that. So he met this guy at a diner somewhere, signed everything. There were some sketchy tenants that were there that kind of messed the place up, and he was going to give him like 60 days before the closing date. Plenty of time for them to get their stuff, get out of there. Okay. But the time came and the tenants still did not get out of there. He had to wait 75 days for the old owner, the landlord, to kick them out through some lawsuit, right? And he had already broke his lease somewhere else, and he's basically homeless. Ended up, you know, moving in with his parents an hour and a half away from where he was working. And then when that was all done, he spent his nights and his weekends fixing this place up. He probably spent like $30,000, okay, on tools, materials, all of that. Not to mention all of the time he spent doing it. But he ripped tons of things out. There was tons of nasty issues. Looked really good when he was done. He really did a good job. But he talked about something called the beginner's illusion, right? You get an idea to do something, you get excited about it, and then you start and you begin to realize that it's more complex, more difficult, takes longer than you thought it was. So many things in life are this way, okay? And anybody who has tried to follow God sincerely knows that he works this way too, okay? So real quick, wanted to share a few verses about this. This is in Malachi chapter 3, right? Talking about the messenger of the covenant coming before the second coming, and then Jesus comes, right? But this applies to Jesus. This applies to that messenger. This applies to anything that's better than you, any situation that currently would overcome you, okay? Right? Things are going to get difficult, so keep that in mind. It says, but who may abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire and a fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver. They may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Okay, so a refiner's fire. What's a refiner's fire? You have to put, silver, gold, a precious metal. It's never pure. You have to burn it, right? There's different materials, there's different metals, and they have different melting points, flashing points, whatever they're called. I'm not like a physicist or anything. Okay? But you have to burn those impurities out, and it takes time. Sometimes they have to do several different rounds of it. Fuller soap, right? Soap gets all the grease, the oils, the dirt out of a white cloth. As you start in the direction that you sincerely think is the best right now, you will start to realize very quickly your inadequacies. The things you thought you had that you don't have. You'll start to realize how things are more difficult than you thought they would be. So with that, I'll briefly share, I guess, my story of my work history, all right, whatever you want to call it. Okay, but I after I had my come to Jesus moment as in my late teenage years, if you want to listen or hear about that, you can go look at the Clarity podcast, my interview on there. Okay. But after that, right, I just wanted to serve God. I just wanted to do what was right. And at that time, I believe that was serving the LDS mission and getting married in the temple so I can be a church leader. And so I went on the mission, came back about a year later, got married. Okay, still didn't know what the flip I wanted to do for a career, but I just thought it would magically work out some way, right? And I had a lot of angst in high school, looking at the people that knew the career they wanted to do, and they got good grades, and they were doing that. Right, school was always a a struggle for me with ADHD and for various other reasons. Okay. And so, actually before that, I went to, at the time it was called LES Business College. And I really struggled to I forget how many credits I was taking, right? But it was a full schedule. It was going to school full time. And I really struggled with, I swear I had like 5 different group projects. I have like 100 pages to read here, 100 pages to read there. I have this essay, that essay, and prioritizing all of it on when is due and what's most important now. I just couldn't do it, man. And I was trying. I lived in the freaking tutoring room for my accounting class, right? But I ended up dropping that class, dropping another one. And then halfway through the semester, maybe, I just dropped everything. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I had people I knew that were graduating college and they weren't using the degree they had at all, right? And so if you don't know what you want to do, college is not the place to go to discover that. I'm glad I dropped out. Okay? If you don't know what you want to do when you're in college, you're probably wasting your time and your money or your parents' money, right? Now that being said, right, if you want to become some type of doctor or lawyer or whatever, an engineer, yeah, you need to go to college. Okay? Also, I think there's very limited good you can do as a medical doctor practicing Western medicine, right? COVID-19. Look at, how many doctors had to violate their conscience to keep their job. And I really admire the ones that lost their career, their licenses, their reputation, whatever, in standing against all that medical tyranny in that time, right? So that's something to think about too with college, with all these different things. You can be put in a position where you've put in tons of work and effort to get to a place where you'll be forced to violate your conscience to stay there, right? Or get kicked out of it, and then your ability to actually use those skills, that knowledge, is in a lucrative way, is going to be quite limited because of how the world is, right? So that's my 2 cents about college, right? Okay, so I dropped out of college. Now what? I started working security at the mall downtown in Salt Lake. Okay. And so I was married. This is before I had kids. I really, really, really wanted to be able to provide for them and not have to worry about money. But all these traditional ways, I saw issues with it. Okay. And anyway, I actually wasn't married yet. I was engaged. Mixing up the timeline here. Doesn't matter. And lo and behold, somebody comes up to me while I was in the mall, and he's like, "Hey, you look familiar. How long you been working here?" Blah blah blah. We get talking, and anyway, he tells me that he has these mentors that are millionaires, and they're teaching them to build passive income on the side of their job so that his wife doesn't have to work, and one day he won't have to work either. Okay. Well, I meet with them, end up signing up for it right as I get married, and yes, this is Utah. And yes, it was a network marketing company. It was Amway with this training thing called Worldwide. Okay, whatever. Hate on me for that if you want. Okay, I had the best of intentions going into it. Okay, I'm not here to debate about that. But I did see real results in there, right? For those of you who don't know what that is, basically they sell a bunch of products, fitness stuff, vitamins, supplements, makeup, whatever, usables that people use all the time. And then you get a bunch of people under you and teach them how to do the same thing. Okay. Anyway, I don't do it anymore. Okay. I don't do it anymore. But I saw people that literally went from making nothing at that to making significant money, where they could bring their wife home. They didn't have to work. They replaced their own income, right? And they have this network of people there. My main problem with it is that only happens because everybody that's in it is buying these products month after month after month. And they're selling hope to you, right? And it only works because there's the vast majority of the people in it aren't really making much or anything, and they're putting tons of money and time and effort into it. without seeing anything. Okay, so I did that for when did we start? August of 2018 until sometime in 2020. Okay, and I tried hard. I was out there networking, educating people about the opportunity. I probably know every freaking store in the state, right? But I never really saw anything come from it. Nonetheless, it really increased my perseverance, my people skills, and all of that, right? And man, I faced some rejection with that, right? With friends and family, with strangers, obviously, and I cried out in the depths of my soul. There was days where I was just in the car by myself screaming that it wasn't working out, but I was holding on to that hope. I was holding on to that hope that specific thing, right? Being an Amway or whatever would work out. Okay. But there were also like pretty, freedom minded people. It's very a mixed bag, right? But COVID came along in 2020, okay, and I was working at this steel place and in a shop cutting stuff, and I hope this isn't too boring, right? Pay attention; it'll be worth it, I promise. Okay, but COVID came along, right, and everybody was telling you to mask up, get your vaccines, social distance, and basically every corporation, every church, every government, every organization was on the same page with that, including the one I was in. But I thought, hey, we're all about financial freedom and even political freedom. They were shutting everything down just like everybody else. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this digitally. I'm having a kid. I'm forking out all this money every month to do this all this time. So my wife and I decided to pray about it, and we quit that. Okay, now what? Well, I always wanted to be a seminary teacher. I felt like we're living in the last days. I feel like most people in the LDS world don't have scriptural literacy, and I do. I've studied my scriptures every day for 10 plus year, right? And I wanted to be able to give something back in that way. So I applied to become a seminary teacher, went through their training thing, taught a couple of classes in the city I lived in at the time, and all the while, all the COVID-19 stuff also opened my eyes, took the scales off my eyes to see that the LDS Church was not what I thought it was. The guys who lead it are not prophets, right? That's a story for another time. Okay, they just went right along with the world, right along with Babylon. And this is while I'm trying to become a seminary teacher, right? I start to meet with other people also who have different claims about LDS Church history and doctrine and things like that. So my testimony to the institution is falling apart at the same time trying to become a seminary teacher. So glad that didn't work out, right? But, it was good to get a little bit of teaching under my belt there, okay? That didn't work out, and had a kid, wanted to have more kids. We were renting out a basement, and I wanted a house. So we started looking for houses and quickly realized that we couldn't really afford it. So I needed to make more money. So I left that steel place, and as fate would have it, my neighbor was taking his garbage out, and he was like, "Hey, how's work?" Went to church with this guy. And I was like, "Oh, it's going all right, I guess." And he's like, "When are you going to come work for us?" And after praying about it, I was like, I called him back and I was like, "Hey, were you serious about that?" He's like, "Yeah." So I start working with them. And mind you, at this point, this was in the height of COVID-19, right? 2021. And I thought the world as we know it imminently was going to end. Okay. So that's the frame of mind I was in at that time. So I was like, I'll get this job and just hold on for dear life until things fall apart, basically, right? And it was restoration work. So, houses that had flood damage, mold damage, fire damage, we'd come rip it out, rebuild it, and it was cool. I like working with my hands. Okay, so I did that. I stayed there. I mean, all in all, I was there, 2-3 years, something. And I was like, I'm just going to make the absolute most of this, right? So I learned everything I could, got the certifications I needed, and I just worked really hard, right? Sometimes it was early, sometimes it was like 12-hour days. But like Joseph in Egypt, I wanted to do the very best that I could there. I would train the new people that came in. I started learning how to do the office work. Basically, if I had to, I could almost run that business, right? And it started just feeling like a jacket that was too small. And this was like late 2022. I just really started feeling like God telling me, hey, what you're doing right now financially is not going to cut it. And I didn't even know fully what that meant, right? I was planning on probably just staying there indefinitely, right? Until the world fell apart, supposedly. But the upward mobility, the increasing my income, and there was opportunities for becoming some sort of manager and stuff like that, and getting overtime, which was cool. But the spirit kept telling me, like, this is not going to cut it. This is not going to cut it. You got to do something different. And at this point, I'm in my early 20s, mid 20s, had a kid, married. It actually did allow me to buy a house, right? But nonetheless, it wasn't going to cut it. So I had to do something different. And I somehow got talking to a mission friend who did door-to-door sales, right? I know most people do this right after an LDS mission or something. Selling pest control. You knock door to door and you sell pest control services, right? And he talked about how there's people making 70, 80, 90, 100K doing that. And I'd never done, mind you, sales before, never been on commission only, but I really felt like I had to jump out of the box, do something different, okay? Because where I was at, right, I was also looking at maybe becoming an electrician, but I didn't want to take a pay cut for a few years with a wife and a kid. Maybe if I was single, I could have done that, right? So if you're single, take chances, take risks, try new things. You can couch hop, you can come back from things. It becomes more difficult when you have a family to do that, okay? But I packed up a bunch of our belongings, brought my whole family down to Florida. We were going to rent out our house back home. I was going to go make buku bucks in Florida selling pest control door to door, right? Had some great experiences there. For a while, I was selling pretty good, but the renters that were going to rent out our house fell through, didn't work out. So now I'm paying for all the bills back home, trying to pay rent and all the bills there in Florida. And that stress was immense, right? I brought a bunch of food storage with us. I drove all the way across the country, slept in my van the whole way. It's kind of a cool experience. But that stress weighed on me. Heavy. And when you're doing door-to-door sales or any type of sales, you need that. Your mood's very important, right? It's hard to fake being in a good mood. People will see right through it if you don't like what you're doing. And that affected my sales, okay? Just compounding the stress. And seeing everyone else, well, not everyone else, but most of the other people being successful. I was happy for them, but it hurt knowing that I wasn't. And I thought about quitting. I really did. Thought about just going home, but I decided to keep persisting. Eventually, my friend just approached me. He's like, hey, look, they started giving me advancing the money and stuff. But he's like, hey, look, we know your situation. I think you need to just cut your losses and go home. And that sucked. I'm like, I came all the way out here and I feel like I'm failing. So I just had to become a tech installing the stuff for some hourly wage to get by in the meantime, right? Finish out the summer. And then we came home and I felt so hopeless, right? Because obviously I felt like God told me to do this, so it should work out. And it didn't, right? Maybe there's things I could have done to make it work out. Okay. But I come back and I'm like, well, maybe I can still try to do sales in some way. So I sign up for this course to get into tech sales, where it's software as a service, right? You sell software to businesses, right? Different than knocking door to door. And anyway, I beef up my resume. I'm reaching out to all these companies, these CEOs, trying to apply for all these jobs, doing a bunch of interviews, and nothing there is working out, right? Most of the jobs are like an hour away, and they're like, hey, I also wanted to get a bigger house, right? And they're like, oh no, that's too far of a drive for you. Move here, and then we can talk and we get you a job here. And then I talk to realtors, and they're like, no, get a better paying job, and then we can talk about moving there. So, whatever. I didn't know what to do, but I had a friend who sold roofs door to door. And he's like, hey, why don't you just come along and come with me, see if you can do it. And he walked me through the process, went with him, saw what he did. And I'm like, I'll give this a try. Once again, commission sales. And surprisingly, in the beginning, it went really well. Like, I was selling. I was making more money than I ever had. Right? Before that, with all the overtime in the other place, guess how much I made? Guess how much I made in a year? $48,000. Woo! Wow! And with this place, the most I made in a year was $60,000, right? But I was new. There's definitely people making $100K, $120K plus doing this a year. Helping people with damaged roofs through insurance get new roofs. All right. But things started happening with the company. A couple of the owners left, a couple of the top people left. They got rid of some good software, and the whole process started becoming more and more difficult and clunky. And it was harder and harder for me to, do things. Communication kind of broke down. I had to keep following up a bunch of times every step of the process to get things moving forward, to get paid. And so I decided, again, I needed to go do something else. Right? Well, the same friend that got me there called me up and was like, hey, do you feel like you're drowning? You doing good there? I'm like, I feel like I'm drowning. Right? And this was, well, not quite a year ago. I don't know, eight-ish months ago now. Okay. But he was working for this foundation repair company. Go do inspections and put together solutions for these people. Again, commission only. But it seemed like a really solid company, right? Okay, they actually have benefits, which normally you don't have in commission-only sales. They actually have benefits. The pay was really good. They take their training super seriously. They have Jocko Willis's extreme ownership stuff, right? Seemed like a really good company, really good culture. So they flew me out to Seattle, started the training for 3 weeks, started doing that, learning everything. Sold a couple jobs, and they told us that we would have like 2 leads a day, right? I don't have to knock doors, 2 leads a day. Great thing. Go out and do it. Right? I've been in construction, been in roofing, been in restoration, so it seemed like a natural thing. Okay. Problem was, I started in the winter, and they said, well, apparently in the winter it's slower, right? There's not as many leads. And so for 6 months, I'd already been in a difficult situation financially, right? I was hoping this would pick up quick, and it didn't. And once again, it started affecting my ability to sell, right? It's a big, long process to get someone through it. It's high ticket items. I'm new at it. I don't have as many leads. Okay. And then once leads finally start picking up, well, guess what? My boss sits me down. I haven't quite been here even 6 months even, right? And he's like, hey, basically your closing rate's too low. Give me something. I'm only giving you 1 lead a week instead of the 5 to 10 a week that normally people would get, right? So less opportunities. Now I have to go knock doors, find leads on my own. And yeah, the pay that they gave you in the beginning is gone now. I did have a couple roofs I was getting paid on. I had to do work on the side. I was doing Instacart. Literally, we're diving in dumpsters, right? And I'm not saying this like, if anyone listening is like, that sounds awful. Well, it kind of is. And if you want to help monetarily, I'm not going to stop you from doing it, but I'm not saying this to ask for any of that. Okay. But, through all of these, and that's where I am right now, right? I still don't know if I'm going to stay with this company or now I have to go back to the drawing board and do something else. Okay. But all of this to say, through all of this, God has shown me my deficiencies, right? My sensitivity to rejection in certain situations, right? And it hurts. It hurts. When I hear my coworkers and other people about they have all this extra money, they're selling a lot of good stuff. They have money to spend on things like hobbies. I don't have a hobby, dude. I'm thinking about when you don't have money, that's all you're thinking about all the time. And right, this is kind of the third time I've been through a test like this where I'm pretty much totally broke, wonder where my next paycheck's going to come from, got to do stuff on the side, got to do this and that, be extremely frugal. Should always be frugal, right? But each time I've grown stronger and stronger and stronger. I've probably stayed here longer than most people would. It's extremely high turnover. I've stayed here and sacrificed more than most people would without making anything. Okay, so I've been totally broke 3 different times now, and it's kind of like in general, I am not a fan of Disney, and in general, not really much of a movie person. Pirates of the Caribbean, I love those, and I think it's a third one where there's like the voodoo doll, and he jumps off a cliff. He has to jump off a cliff for whatever reason, and somebody just throws it off the cliff, and he's like, "Die!" because he feels right all the pain as if he was the one jumping off the cliff. He's like, okay, that's what it's like. I'll go ahead and do it, right? I felt it before, and that's kind of what this is like, right? I'm jumping into it again and again and again. But it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be almost 30 and to admit that I'm broke and it's a struggle to pay bills, and I'm getting help from people, and I'm doing work on the side, and I can't just focus on one thing because I still got to pay the bills somehow. I don't want to go into a bunch of debt, right? But I share all this to say to young men that if you can have your career or be in a situation where you're making more money and have more of that figured out before you get married, or especially before you have kids, it can probably be better for you. Okay? Obviously, I'm not some fount of wisdom, but I went through a tremendous amount of pain. And a lot of it, I think, unnecessary suffering through all of that. And still am. Because I didn't have a solid plan. Because I thought I could just whip something up real quick and it would work. Right? But through all of it, God has also shown me my deficiencies. And I've done a lot of reading and a lot of praying, a lot of self-reflecting, a lot of persevering to where I'm stronger and smarter now than I ever have been. But you don't necessarily have to go through all that suffering, at least in the way that I did. Okay? You can find those who have what you want, talk to them, ask them about it, ask them about how to get there, and figure out a plan for your life, for your career. And you can be in a much better position than I am. And when I share this also, like if there's anybody, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years older than me that has any advice for me, please reach out. I'm all ears. Okay? But, I should share another thing that if you've heard my interview on the Clarity podcast, pornography on and off has been a struggle for me throughout my life. Usually it's when things start getting really hard and I'm feeling that pressure, I turn to sin. Often it took that form, right? Doing less than the best you know. That thing is obviously a sin, okay? This time, though, I'm not. My conscience is clear. I'm prioritizing the tasks of my day. I'm not turning to pornography. I'm not turning to anything that's a sin, anything that's less than the best that I know. My conscience is clear, and it feels so good. I have so much peace knowing that. right? The purifying of the silver. We all want to be better. We all want to be stronger. We all want to be more like Jesus, but you have to go through the fire to get there. And part of that is you have to be willing to share the embarrassing things about your life that can benefit others, where you can help other people not have to go through the pain and suffering that you have gone through unnecessarily because of your poor choices, uneducated choices, or choices that you knew just weren't the best. When it comes to things like choosing a job and career, things like dating, marriage, things like how you take care of your body. There's a tendency in people, in adults, to not share the mistakes they've made in these areas because it's embarrassing, right? Because instead of being like the cool, inspiring parent or uncle or whatever you are, maybe you feel like a loser, right? Maybe you have had a lot of failures in those areas. There's so many ways you could have been better, and it's embarrassing and painful to share your failures with people. And maybe you don't feel like you have a lot to offer. But one thing, bare minimum, that you do have to offer is sharing your mistakes with people so they can be wiser and better off than you are, with your own children, with other people, with people on the internet, with strangers. Please share your successes, your failures, your wisdom with other people. Anyway, that's my thoughts, right? If I had to do my career all over again, I probably would have dropped out of college or just got my GED and gone straight into sales and gotten really good at it, or straight into some sort of trade and gotten really good at it, or tried to start my own business, right? And I know people who have done both of those paths, and they're in really good shape right now, financially. And so they can provide for their family. They can give them great opportunities, right? And my situation can continue to improve in certain ways. It can, right? I'm not losing hope or anything. Okay? The better you do, the better things get. But make a plan for your life. Okay? It's still going to be more difficult than you thought. You're still going to have setbacks, but you can learn from them. You're not the first person to go through it. We have an amazing thing called the internet. No matter what path you're trying to go down and what you want to accomplish in life, there's somebody who's been there, done that, and failed at it. There's somebody who's been there and done that and done really good at it, and everywhere in between. Learn from them. Contact them. Okay? If I can be of any help to anybody, go ahead, reach out in the comments. Okay? And we can talk. Okay? But God will see you through. He knows what's best for you. And there may be a lot of suffering on that path, but that's the only path to real joy. So I hope this can be of use to somebody.